The piercing wail of the base alarm shattered the afternoon silence at Naval Base Coronado at exactly 2:47 p.m. "Emergency lockdown! All personnel remain in place!" The automated voice boomed through every speaker on the installation. Emily Clark was kneeling beside the massive printer in conference room B7, her hands stained black with toner ink, when the 800-pound steel security door slammed shut with a thunderous metallic crash. The automatic sealing system engaged with a series of mechanical clicks and hisses. No way out, no way in. 25 military personnel froze in place. SEAL Team 3, Marine intelligence officers, Navy security specialists, all trapped in the 20 by 30-foot room with one small IT support technician who had been replacing ink cartridges. SEAL Team leader Jake Mitchell looked at Emily with a smirk that barely concealed his irritation. "Perfect. Stuck with the printer girl during a crisis situation. What's your rank, sweetheart? Private toner cartridge?" The comment drew rough chuckles from several Marines positioned near the conference table. Emily remained silent, standing slowly and wiping her hands clean on a paper towel. Her movements were deliberate, controlled. But in the next 20 minutes, everyone in this sealed room would understand just how wrong they had been about the quiet woman standing beside the printer, with eyes that observed everything in ways that only those who had survived hell could truly recognize. The room fell into an uneasy quiet as the reality of their situation began to sink in. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the faces of some of the most elite warriors in the United States military. Outside, the sound of running boots echoed through the corridors, growing fainter as security teams moved to their designated positions. Emily folded her paper towel with precise military corners, a habit so ingrained it happened without conscious thought. The fold was perfect, identical to the way fresh recruits were taught to fold everything during basic training. Staff Sergeant Marcus Torres, a Marine with arms like tree trunks and a chest full of ribbons, noticed the fold. "Look at that," he said to the man beside him. "It girl thinks she's military. Probably watched some YouTube videos about proper folding techniques." More laughter rippled through the room, but it had a nervous edge to it now. The kind of laughter that came when trained killers found themselves in a situation they couldn't control. Emily's eyes automatically cataloged every exit point in the room. The main door now sealed, the ventilation grates too small for human passage, the reinforced windows that wouldn't break even under sustained assault. 25 personnel, 15 of them armed with sidearms, 10 carrying additional tactical equipment. She counted without appearing to count, assessed without appearing to assess. It was muscle memory from another life, another identity. If this injustice makes your blood boil, then hit that like button and subscribe right now. Don't let people who dismiss and underestimate women get the last word. Captain Lisa Crawford, the base security chief, paced near the sealed door like a caged animal. She was a compact woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, except, apparently, the significance of what she was seeing right now. "This is just great," Crawford muttered. "Base-wide emergency, and we're babysitting a civilian contractor who probably doesn't even have basic security clearance." The emergency protocols continued broadcasting through the overhead speakers. Standard evacuation procedures, emergency assembly points, communication protocols. Emily knew them all. Not just knew them, she knew them better than most of the people in this room. She knew the backup routes, the secondary protocols, the classified contingencies that weren't in the standard manual. But she also knew that revealing that knowledge too early would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. Major Robert Peters from Naval Intelligence leaned against the conference table, his analyst's mind already working the problem. Peters was thin, sharp-featured, the kind of man who noticed details others missed. "Has anyone noticed how calm she is?" he said quietly to Crawford. "Most civilians would be panicking by now, but look at her. She's not even breathing hard." Emily maintained her position near the printer, but her stance had shifted subtly. Weight balanced, feet positioned for immediate movement in any direction. It wasn't conscious. Her body simply moved into tactical positioning automatically when threat levels increased. 20 years of training didn't just disappear because someone put on civilian clothes and started fixing printers. Second Lieutenant Tommy Kim, fresh out of officer training and still eager to prove himself, stepped toward Emily with what he probably thought was a reassuring smile. "Hey, don't worry about these guys," he said softly. "They're just stressed about the lockdown. I'll make sure nothing happens to you, okay? Just stay close to me and we'll get through this together." The condescension in his voice, however well-intentioned, made several of the senior enlisted men exchange glances. Chief Petty Officer Johnson, who had been running security for this conference room for 3 years, shook his head. "Kid's got a lot to learn about reading people," he muttered to his partner. The communication systems chose that moment to fail. The overhead speakers went silent mid-sentence, cutting off in the middle of an evacuation update. Emergency lighting flickered once, twice, then steadied into the dim amber glow that meant backup power had kicked in. In the sudden quiet, everyone could hear their own breathing, their own heartbeats. Emily moved to the wall panel beside the door, not quickly, not dramatically, just with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where everything was located. Her fingers found the emergency communication interface, a system that most people didn't even know existed, let alone how to access. The biometric scanner activated under her touch, cycling through its security protocols. "How does she know about that?" Jake Mitchell's voice had lost its mocking tone. He was staring at Emily with the focused attention of a predator assessing a potential threat. "That's not standard civilian equipment. That's classified emergency infrastructure." Emily's fingers moved across the interface with practiced precision, not the hesitant fumbling of someone figuring it out, but the smooth motions of someone who had used this exact system countless times before. The scanner accepted her biometric data without hesitation, granting access to protocols that were supposed to be available only to personnel with top-secret clearance. Marcus Torres pushed himself off the wall, where he had been leaning. "Wait just a minute here. That system is classified. How does an IT contractor know how to access base emergency protocols?" His voice carried the dangerous edge of a Marine who had just realized something didn't add up. The scanner completed its sequence and displayed a menu of options that made several people in the room step closer to see. Emergency communications, base-wide alert status, threat assessment protocols, information that most of the people in this room didn't have clearance to access, despite their military ranks and security positions. Emily scrolled through the information with the rapid eye movements of someone speed-reading technical data. Her expression remained neutral, but those watching closely could see her processing massive amounts of information at a rate that suggested extensive training in intelligence analysis. This wasn't someone learning as they went. This was someone reviewing familiar data streams. "Base perimeter has been breached in 3 locations," she said quietly, her voice carrying just enough to reach everyone in the room. "Multiple hostiles, estimated 8 to 12 individuals armed with military-grade equipment. They've cut primary communications and are working on backup systems." The room went dead silent. Captain Crawford was the first to find her voice. "How could you possibly know that? That information isn't available through civilian channels. Hell, most of that isn't available through standard military channels either." Emily turned away from the panel, and for the first time since the lockdown began, she made direct eye contact with the people questioning her. Her gaze was steady, calm, completely unintimidated by a room full of armed military personnel. "IT maintenance gives you access to a lot of systems," she said simply. "You'd be surprised what you can learn when you're troubleshooting network connectivity issues." But Jake Mitchell wasn't buying it. 20 years as a SEAL had taught him to read people, to spot deception, to identify threats regardless of their packaging. "Network troubleshooting doesn't teach you how to interpret tactical threat assessments, lady. And it sure doesn't explain why you're standing like you're ready to fight your way out of here." Emily glanced down at her own stance and made a conscious effort to relax her posture. But the damage was done. Several people in the room had noticed the subtle shift from civilian technician to something else entirely. Something that didn't quite fit the IT support narrative. The power flickered again, longer this time, and when the emergency lighting stabilized, it was noticeably dimmer. Backup power was struggling under the load of maintaining security systems throughout the entire base. In the reduced visibility, Emily's eyes automatically adjusted, pupils dilating to gather maximum available light. Another reflex that civilian technicians generally didn't possess. Dr. Amanda Walsh, the base psychologist who had been quietly observing from her position near the window, spoke for the first time. "Interesting stress response patterns," she said, her voice carrying the clinical detachment of someone analyzing a subject. "Most civilians in this situation would be showing signs of acute anxiety, elevated breathing, fidgeting, seeking reassurance from authority figures. But her physiological responses suggest someone with extensive stress inoculation training." Major Peters was now openly staring at Emily. "Stress inoculation training isn't something you pick up in IT school. That's advanced military psychology. Special operations psychology." The questioning was getting too specific, too pointed. Emily could feel the attention of the room focusing on her like a laser, and she needed to redirect it before someone started asking questions she really couldn't answer. But redirecting attention in a room full of highly trained military personnel required a delicate touch. "Look," she said, holding up her hands in what appeared to be a gesture of surrender. "I've been working its support on military bases for 10 years. You pick things up. You see how people behave, you learn the systems, you understand the protocols. It's not magic, it's just experience." But even as she spoke, her eyes were moving in a pattern that had nothing to do with civilian experience and everything to do with tactical assessment. She was calculating angles, measuring distances, identifying potential weapons among the office supplies and furniture. Her brain was running escape scenarios and defensive positions automatically, without conscious input. Chief Johnson had worked security long enough to recognize predatory behavior when he saw it. "Ma'am, I've been watching people for 25 years, and you're not watching us like someone who's scared. You're watching us like someone who's calculating how to take us down if you had to." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. 25 military personnel, all of them armed and trained, all of them suddenly very aware that the small woman they had been dismissing might represent a threat they couldn't identify or quantify. Emily forced a laugh that sounded almost genuine. "You guys have some serious paranoia issues. I'm 5'4" and I weigh 120 pounds soaking wet. The only thing I could take down is a printer jam." But as she spoke, Marcus Torres noticed something that made his Marine training kick into high alert. The woman's hands were positioned exactly where they should be for immediate weapon deployment. Not obviously, not dramatically, just positioned with the kind of unconscious precision that came from thousands of hours of muscle memory training. "Show me your hands," Marcus said, his voice carrying the command authority of a combat veteran. "Palms up, fingers spread." Emily complied immediately, but not in the hesitant, confused way of an innocent civilian. She moved with the smooth efficiency of someone who had been through this exact procedure countless times before. Her hands were steady, controlled, positioned for maximum visibility while maintaining the ability to transition to defensive postures if necessary. Marcus studied her palms carefully. No visible weapon calluses, but the skin pattern suggested someone who had spent considerable time handling equipment that required grip strength and precision, not the soft hands of someone who spent all day typing on keyboards and replacing printer cartridges. Did you catch that detail? Comment your theories about Emily's real background below. Captain Crawford was now actively suspicious. "I think we need to search her," she said to Major Peters. "Base emergency, unknown personnel with access to classified systems, behavioral patterns that don't match her supposed background. This is starting to smell like an operational security nightmare." "Ma'am," Emily said quietly, "I understand you're concerned, but searching civilian contractors without cause could create legal complications for the base. I'm happy to cooperate with reasonable security measures, but I also have rights that need to be respected." The legal reference was delivered with the kind of precision that suggested someone with extensive experience navigating military bureaucracy, not the confused fumbling of a civilian contractor who suddenly found herself in an unprecedented situation, but the confident navigation of someone who understood exactly how military command structures worked. Jake Mitchell stepped closer, close enough that Emily could smell his tactical soap and see the small scar along his jawline that spoke of close-quarters combat experience. "You know what I think?" he said softly. "I think you're not who you claim to be. I think you're some kind of operative running a cover identity, and this emergency just blew your operational security to hell." Emily met his gaze steadily. "I think you've been reading too many spy novels, Chief. Sometimes a printer technician is just a printer technician." But even as she spoke, her body language was telling a different story. She wasn't backing down from a confrontation with a SEAL team leader. She wasn't showing the deference that civilian contractors typically displayed when challenged by senior military personnel. If anything, she seemed to be evaluating Jake Mitchell as a potential tactical problem that might require resolution. The emergency lighting flickered again, and in the brief darkness, Emily's position shifted slightly. When the light steadied, she had moved 3 feet to the left and was now positioned behind a structural support column that would provide cover from multiple angles. The movement had been so smooth, so natural, that most people in the room didn't even realize it had happened. But Jake Mitchell noticed, and Major Peters noticed, and Chief Johnson noticed. "Holy cow," Johnson muttered. Did you see that? She just moved to a defensive position like it was automatic, like breathing. The room was beginning to feel smaller, more tense. 25 military personnel were starting to realize that they might be locked in a confined space with someone whose background was not what it appeared to be. And in the current security situation, with hostiles on the base and communications down, that was the kind of uncertainty that could get people killed. Dr. Walsh spoke again, her voice still clinically detached, but now carrying an edge of concern. Her behavioral adaptations are consistent with someone who has been through advanced survival training, possibly SEER school or equivalent programs. That level of environmental awareness and tactical positioning doesn't develop naturally. SEER school, survival, evasion, resistance, escape training, the kind of program that only elite military personnel attended, and only after extensive background investigations and security clearances that went far beyond what would be required for an IT contractor. Emily could feel the walls closing in. Too many trained eyes, too many people asking the right questions, too many details that didn't fit her cover story. She needed to give them something, some explanation that would satisfy their suspicions without revealing the full truth. "Look," she said, her voice taking on a slightly different tone, still civilian, but with undertones that suggested hidden depths. "I may have had some military experience before I got into IT work. A lot of veterans end up in contractor positions after they get out. It doesn't mean I'm some kind of secret agent." The admission was carefully calculated, enough truth to explain the anomalies they were noticing, but vague enough to avoid specific questions about units, deployments, or security clearances. It was the kind of half-truth that someone with extensive deception training would use to manage an operational crisis. Marcus Torres leaned forward. "What branch? What MOS? How long did you serve?" Those aren't complicated questions for someone with military background. Emily hesitated for just a moment, long enough to suggest that she was being careful about what she revealed, but not long enough to suggest she was fabricating answers. "Army, IT specialist, just like I am now. 4 years active duty, finished my commitment, and moved into contractor work." It was a plausible story, the kind of background that would explain some of her knowledge and capabilities without raising too many additional questions. Army IT specialists did have access to classified systems, did receive security training, did develop some of the skills she was demonstrating, but Jake Mitchell wasn't satisfied. Army IT specialists don't go through SEER training. They don't learn tactical positioning. They don't develop the kind of situational awareness you're showing. So, either you're lying about your background, or you had additional training that you're not telling us about. The interrogation was getting more intense, more focused. Emily could feel multiple sets of trained eyes analyzing every word she spoke, every gesture she made, looking for inconsistencies and deception indicators. It was like being under a microscope operated by people who had spent their careers learning how to identify threats. The emergency panel beeped softly, indicating an incoming communication attempt. Emily moved toward it automatically, then stopped herself when she realized that accessing the system again would only reinforce their suspicions about her capabilities. Captain Crawford noticed the movement and the hesitation. "Go ahead," she said. "See what the message says. But understand that we're going to be asking some very pointed questions about how you know how to operate that equipment." Emily approached the panel and activated the communication interface. Her fingers moved across the controls with unconscious familiarity, navigating through security menus and authentication protocols without hesitation. The message that appeared on the screen made several people in the room step closer to read over her shoulder. "Base perimeter breach has expanded," Emily read aloud. "Hostiles have accessed buildings 7 through 9. All personnel in affected areas are advised to maintain lockdown protocols until further notice. Estimated time to resolution is unknown. Building 7, Conference Room B7. They were no longer just observing an emergency from a safe distance. They were now directly in the path of whatever was happening on the base. Major Peters pulled out his secure communication device and attempted to establish contact with base command. Nothing. The device showed no signal, no connectivity, no ability to reach the outside world. "They've taken down our communication infrastructure," he said grimly. "Whatever's happening out there, we're on our own until it's resolved." Emily studied the information display for several more seconds, then turned back to the room. "We need to secure this space," she said, and her voice had changed. Gone was the hesitant tone of a civilian contractor caught in an emergency. This was the voice of someone accustomed to command, someone who understood tactical situations and was prepared to take action. "Excuse me?" Captain Crawford's eyebrows rose. "We need to secure this space? Who exactly do you think you are to start giving tactical guidance to military personnel?" Emily realized her mistake immediately. She had slipped back into old patterns, old habits, old ways of thinking about crisis situations. But the damage was done. Everyone in the room had heard the change in her voice, the assumption of authority that didn't match her supposed background. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I just meant that maybe we should think about how to protect ourselves if those hostiles get to this building. I didn't mean to overstep." But the backtrack felt forced, unconvincing, like someone reading from a script rather than expressing genuine thoughts and concerns. Jake Mitchell was now openly staring at her. "You know what's interesting? When you said we need to secure this space, you sounded like someone who had done it before, a lot of times. You sounded like someone who was used to being in charge during emergencies." The room fell silent except for the hum of the ventilation system and the distant sound of what might have been gunfire echoing through the building's structure. Everyone was looking at Emily now, waiting to see how she would respond to the increasingly direct challenges to her stated identity. Emily moved to the window and looked out at the base beyond. From her position, she could see movement in the distance, small figures moving in tactical formations between buildings, professional movement, coordinated and purposeful. Whatever was happening on Naval Base Coronado was not some random security incident. "Those aren't amateurs out there," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else in the room. But her voice carried, and several people heard the assessment. Chief Johnson joined her at the window. "What makes you say that?" Emily pointed to the figures moving between buildings. "Watch their movement patterns. They're using proper bounding overwatch, maintaining communication intervals, advancing with covering fire protocols. That's not gang violence or domestic terrorism. That's military training." The tactical assessment was delivered with the kind of precision that came from extensive experience analyzing enemy movement patterns. Not the educated guess of someone who had watched military movies, but the professional analysis of someone who had done this before under live fire conditions. Marcus Torres was now paying very close attention. How exactly does an Army IT specialist learn to analyze enemy movement patterns? Emily realized she had revealed too much, again. Every time she opened her mouth, she gave them more pieces of a puzzle that was starting to form a picture she couldn't allow them to see. Not yet. Not until she understood exactly what was happening on this base and whether the people in this room could be trusted. "You pick things up," she said lamely. "Military bases, you see training exercises, you hear people talking about tactics. It's not specialized knowledge." But even as she spoke, she was continuing to analyze the tactical situation outside. The hostile forces were moving, with the kind of coordination that suggested extensive planning and intelligence gathering. They knew the base layout, knew the security protocols, knew exactly how to neutralize communication systems and access restricted areas. This wasn't a random attack. This was a targeted operation, planned and executed by professionals with specific objectives. And one of those objectives might be related to her presence on this base. Emily checked her watch, a military-style timepiece that displayed time in 24-hour format rather than the 12-hour civilian standard. 2:58 p.m. The emergency had been in effect for 11 minutes, but it felt like hours. Time had a way of distorting during crisis situations, especially when you were locked in a confined space with people who were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Dr. Walsh had been observing Emily's behavior throughout the interrogation, and her psychological training was providing insights that the others might miss. Her stress responses are consistent with someone managing multiple operational concerns simultaneously, she said quietly to Major Peters. She's not just worried about the immediate threat, she's calculating secondary and tertiary implications. That's advanced strategic thinking. Major Peters nodded grimly. "I'm starting to think our IT contractor might be a lot more than she appears to be. The question is whether that's good news or bad news for us." Emily heard the whispered conversation and realized that her window for maintaining her cover identity was rapidly closing. Too many trained observers, too many inconsistencies, too many slips that revealed knowledge and capabilities that didn't match her supposed background. The emergency lighting flickered again, and this time it stayed dim for several seconds before stabilizing. Backup power was being taxed heavily, which suggested that whatever was happening on the base was affecting multiple systems simultaneously. Emily moved away from the window and began a casual circuit of the room, ostensibly checking on the other personnel, but actually conducting a detailed tactical assessment of their confined space. 25 people, multiple skill sets, various levels of combat training. In a crisis situation, she would need to know exactly what resources were available. Jake Mitchell watched her movement pattern with growing suspicion. "You're doing it again," he said, moving like someone who's done tactical assessments before, checking sightlines, identifying potential defensive positions, cataloging personnel and equipment. That's not civilian behavior. Emily stopped her circuit and faced him directly. "Maybe I'm just nervous. Maybe I'm trying to stay busy so I don't panic. Maybe you're reading too much into normal human behavior during a stressful situation." But her explanation lacked conviction, and everyone in the room could hear it. She was running out of plausible explanations for behavior patterns that were becoming increasingly difficult to explain away. The emergency panel beeped again, indicating another incoming message. This time, Emily hesitated before approaching it. Accessing the system would reinforce their suspicions about her capabilities, but ignoring it might mean missing critical information about the tactical situation they were facing. Captain Crawford made the decision for her. "Check the message," she ordered. "And this time, I want a detailed explanation of how you know how to operate that equipment." Emily approached the panel reluctantly and activated the communication interface. The message that appeared was longer and more detailed than the previous updates, and its content made her blood run cold. "Building 7 has been breached," she read aloud. "Hostile forces are conducting room-to-room searches. All personnel in affected areas should prepare for potential contact. Rules of engagement are authorized for self-defense situations." Room-to-room searches. They were looking for something specific, or someone specific. Emily's mind raced through the possibilities. Intelligence assets, classified materials, high-value targets who might be on the base. The list of potential objectives was long, but all of them pointed to the same conclusion. This was not a random attack. Major Peters drew his sidearm and checked the chamber. "Looks like we might be moving from passive observation to active participation. Everyone who's armed, prepare your weapons. Everyone who isn't, stay low and follow instructions." Emily automatically moved to a position that would provide cover from the most likely breach points, the main door and the windows. Her body shifted into a combat-ready stance without conscious thought, weight balanced for immediate movement in any direction. Marcus Torres noticed the positioning immediately. There she goes again. Perfect tactical positioning, automatic threat assessment, combat-ready stance. Army IT specialists don't move like that, lady. So, who are you really? The question hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. 25 military personnel, all of them now armed and alert, all of them staring at the small woman who had been replacing printer cartridges when the emergency began. The woman whose behavior patterns suggested training and experience far beyond what her cover identity could explain. Emily realized that her operational security was completely compromised. Too many trained eyes, too many inconsistencies, too many reflexive behaviors that revealed her true background. She needed to make a decision about how much truth to reveal, and how quickly. But before she could respond, the lights went out completely. Emergency power had failed, plunging conference room B7 into absolute darkness. In the sudden blackness, Emily heard the distinctive sound of weapons being drawn and safeties being disengaged. 25 military personnel, all of them armed, all of them unable to see potential threats. All of them increasingly suspicious of the one person in the room whose identity didn't match her behavior. Emily remained motionless in the darkness, controlling her breathing, listening to the sounds of movement around her. Her eyes began adjusting to the absence of light, pupils dilating to gather whatever ambient illumination might be available. Night vision adaptation was another skill that civilian contractors generally didn't possess, but which came automatically to people with extensive field experience. "Everyone remain calm," Captain Crawford's voice cut through the darkness. "Maintain your positions until we can establish some kind of lighting." But Emily was already moving, navigating through the darkened room with the confident precision of someone who had memorized every obstacle, every piece of furniture, every potential hazard. Her feet found silent paths across the floor, avoiding the areas where she knew people were positioned. "How is she moving around in here?" Jake Mitchell's voice carried a note of alarm. "I can't see my hand in front of my face, but she's walking around like she has night vision goggles." Emily froze at the comment, realizing that once again her training had overridden her operational security. Moving confidently in complete darkness was another behavior that didn't fit her cover identity. "I'm just trying to get to the emergency lighting controls," she said, but her voice came from a different location than where people expected it to be. She had moved several feet during the conversation, demonstrating spatial awareness and navigation skills that reinforced their growing suspicions. The darkness lasted for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, long enough for everyone in the room to realize that Emily Clark, IT contractor, was not who she claimed to be. When the emergency lighting finally flickered back to life, casting its amber glow across the conference room, Emily was standing beside the emergency control panel with her hand resting on the manual override switch. "How did you find that in complete darkness?" Major Peters asked quietly. "That control panel isn't marked with tactile indicators. You'd have to know exactly where it was located and how to operate it." Emily looked at her hand on the control switch, as if she was surprised to find it there. "Lucky guess?" she offered weakly. But nobody in the room was buying it anymore. The accumulation of inconsistencies, unexplained capabilities, and behavioral anomalies had reached a tipping point. Whatever Emily Clark's real story was, it had nothing to do with being an IT contractor for civilian companies. Jake Mitchell stepped closer, his weapon still drawn but pointed at the floor. "I think it's time for some honest answers, starting with who you really are and what you're really doing on this base." Emily looked around the room at 25 pairs of eyes, all of them focused on her with the intensity of trained predators who had identified a potential threat. She had reached the moment every undercover operative dreaded, the moment when cover identities collapsed and truth became unavoidable. But before she could respond, the sound of automatic gunfire echoed through the building, much closer than before. The hostile forces had reached their floor, and they were conducting their room-to-room search with lethal force. Everyone in conference room B7 was about to discover that whatever Emily Clark's real identity might be, they were going to need her skills to survive the next few minutes. Emily examined the nearby tactical equipment storage cabinet that none of the other personnel had noticed during their initial assessment of the room. Her fingers found the biometric lock, another system that shouldn't have responded to civilian contractor credentials, but which opened smoothly under her access codes. Inside the cabinet were communication devices, night vision equipment, and other specialized gear that confirmed what several people in the room had already begun to suspect. Conference room B7 was not just a standard meeting space, but a classified briefing room equipped for sensitive operations. "Holy cow," Chief Johnson breathed. "This is a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. What the heck were you really doing in here when the lockdown started?" Emily had been checking something else entirely when she'd been replacing the printer cartridges. She had been conducting a security sweep of the room's electronic systems, looking for signs of compromise or surveillance. The printer maintenance had been her cover for accessing the room's classified infrastructure. Marcus Torres was beginning to understand. "You weren't here to fix the printer, were you? You were here to check the security systems, which means you have clearance levels way above what any IT contractor should possess." The automatic gunfire was getting closer, and Emily could hear tactical commands being shouted in the corridor outside. Professional voices, coordinated movements, systematic advancement through the building. Whatever was happening on Naval Base Coronado was being executed by people with military training and specific objectives. Emily listened to the tactical communications filtering through the walls and recognized something that made her blood freeze. The accent patterns, the command structure, the operational terminology. She had heard these voices before, in a place far from California, under circumstances that had ended with most of her unit listed as killed in action. "We need to prepare for contact," she said quietly, and once again her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command during crisis situations. "They're 3 rooms away and moving systematically through the building. We have maybe 5 minutes before they reach this door." Captain Crawford stared at her. How could you possibly know their location and timing from those sounds? Emily had been listening to tactical communications for 20 years. She could identify unit sizes, movement patterns, and operational objectives from audio signatures that most people would dismiss as random noise. It was a skill developed through countless operations in hostile territory, refined through experiences that had tested every aspect of her training. "Experience," she said simply, and this time she didn't try to explain it away or minimize its significance. Jake Mitchell made a decision that would change everything that happened next. "Ma'am," he said formally, and the title carried real respect for the first time since the conversation had started. "I don't know who you really are, but I'm starting to think we're going to need whatever skills you actually possess. So maybe it's time to stop pretending to be someone you're not." Emily looked around the room one more time, calculating odds and assessing capabilities. 25 military personnel with various levels of combat training, confined in a specialized facility under assault by unknown hostile forces. The tactical situation was complex, but not impossible. She walked to the tactical equipment cabinet and began removing items that would be needed for the next phase of the engagement. Night vision devices, communication gear, specialized equipment that most of the people in the room wouldn't even recognize. "My name is Emily Clark," she said as she worked. But that's not the whole story. Emily accessed the tablet she had found in the secure storage cabinet and began examining the building's security infrastructure in detail. Camera feeds, motion sensors, communication intercepts, real-time threat assessments. The technology was military-grade and far beyond what would be found in a standard office environment. "This isn't just a conference room," she said as she navigated through the classified systems. "This is a command and control facility designed for special operations coordination. And those people outside aren't random terrorists. They're professionals who know exactly what they're looking for." Major Peters leaned over her shoulder to examine the tablet display. "How are you accessing systems that require top-secret clearance and specialized authentication codes?" Emily paused in her work and looked up at him. "Because I have top-secret clearance and specialized authentication codes. The question is whether you're ready to hear the rest of the story." Marcus Torres was watching the door, weapon ready, listening to the approaching tactical sounds. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I don't care if you're the Queen of England at this point. If you have skills that can keep us alive, then use them." Emily nodded and returned her attention to the tablet. Thermal imaging shows 8 hostiles moving through the corridor. Military-grade equipment, coordinated advance, systematic clearing procedures. They're looking for someone or something specific in this facility. She pulled up building schematics and began identifying defensive positions, escape routes, and tactical advantages that could be exploited in an engagement. Her analysis was rapid, professional, comprehensive, the work of someone with extensive experience in close-quarters combat planning. "There," she said, pointing to a section of the building layout. "Service corridor behind that wall panel leads to an alternate exit, but we'd have to neutralize the hostile element before we could access it safely." Jake Mitchell studied the tactical display over her shoulder. "Neutralize how? We've got sidearms and limited ammunition. They've got automatic weapons and military training." Emily stood and walked to another section of the tactical cabinet. Inside were items that made everyone in the room step back in surprise. Specialized weapons, tactical equipment, and technology that was clearly not standard issue for a conference room facility. "Conference room B7 is equipped for more than just meetings," she said. "It's designed as a safe room for high-value personnel during the base security emergencies, which means it has capabilities that most people don't know about." She activated a wall panel that opened to reveal additional equipment storage, weapons, ammunition, communication gear, and defensive systems that could turn the conference room into a tactical command post. Captain Crawford stared at the hidden arsenal. "I've been base security chief for 3 years, and I had no idea this was here. How do you know about classified defensive systems that aren't in my security briefings?" Emily checked on the weapons and began distributing them to personnel with appropriate training levels. "Because I was involved in the design and installation of these systems. 3 years ago, when this facility was being upgraded for special operations support, the statement hung in the air like a revelation. 3 years ago, Emily Clark had been listed in base records as a civilian IT contractor, but she had also been involved in classified facility upgrades that would have required extensive security clearance and specialized knowledge. Major Peters was beginning to understand. Your intelligence community, not military intelligence. Something deeper. Something that requires cover identities and compartmentalized operations. Emily handed him a tactical rifle and magazine. 30 rounds, selective fire, effective range 400 meters in this environment. "Do you remember your close-quarters combat training?" Peters accepted the weapon automatically, his muscle memory taking over even as his mind struggled to process the implications of what was happening. "Yes, ma'am, but I still don't understand who you are or why you have access to all this equipment." Emily was now moving with the confident efficiency of someone in her natural environment. Gone was the hesitant manner of the civilian contractor. This was a professional operator preparing for combat. Emily began analyzing the building's tactical situation with the help of advanced monitoring equipment built into the conference room's classified systems. Multiple displays showed real-time information about hostile positions, movement patterns, and operational objectives. "They're not random terrorists, you see, be interrupts," she said as she studied the intelligence feeds. "This is a targeted extraction operation. They're looking for specific personnel or materials, and they have detailed intelligence about base security protocols." Jake Mitchell was now treating her as a tactical asset rather than a potential threat. What kind of extraction? Who would they be trying to retrieve from a Navy base? Emily highlighted several locations on the building schematic where the hostile forces had concentrated their search efforts. High-value intelligence assets, classified research materials, or personnel with access to sensitive information. Based on their movement patterns, they're looking for someone who would normally be found in this building. The implications were clear to everyone in the room. Someone in conference room B7 was the target of the operation, or had access to something the hostile forces wanted to acquire. "The question," Emily continued, "is whether they know I'm here." Captain Crawford understood immediately. "You think this is about you? This entire base security emergency is a targeted operation to extract you specifically?" Emily accessed another level of classified information that made everyone in the room realize they were dealing with something far beyond a standard security incident. Database searches, intelligence assessments, operational histories that revealed connections between current events and past operations in locations around the world. 3 years ago, I was part of an operation in Afghanistan that eliminated a terrorist network with connections to international arms trafficking. We thought we got everyone, but intelligence indicated that some operatives escaped and might attempt retaliation against team members. Marcus Torres was now paying very close attention. "What kind of operation? What unit were you with?" Emily hesitated for just a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. "Special Activities Division, Counterterrorism Operations in Denied Areas. My cover identity as an IT contractor was designed to provide security while intelligence assets evaluated ongoing threats. Special Activities Division, the most classified element of the Central Intelligence Agency, responsible for operations that didn't officially exist and personnel who were never officially acknowledged." If Emily was sad, then her presence on Naval Base Coronado was not coincidental. Jake Mitchell understood the implications immediately. "So this entire emergency is about extracting you? 25 military personnel are trapped in here because someone wants revenge for an operation 3 years ago?" Emily nodded grimly. "And the people outside aren't going to be satisfied with just taking me. Anyone who has seen my real capabilities, anyone who might be able to identify me later, represents a security risk they'll want to eliminate." The tactical situation had just become much more serious. They weren't just dealing with an emergency lockdown. They were trapped in a confined space with one of the CIA's most classified operatives, under assault by professionals who intended to eliminate everyone who might be able to testify about what they had seen. Dr. Walsh spoke for the first time in several minutes. "So our choice is to help you fight them off, or become collateral damage in a classified operation that we stumbled into by accident." Emily was already preparing defensive positions around the room. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this. If I could get you out of here safely, I would. But at this point, our best chance for survival is to work together and neutralize the threat before they complete their mission." Chief Johnson took position behind a barricade Emily had constructed from conference tables and equipment. "Ma'am, what exactly are we up against? How many hostiles? What kind of equipment? What level of training?" Emily consulted the tactical displays and provided a comprehensive briefing that demonstrated her extensive experience with threat assessment and operational planning. 8 confirmed hostiles, military training equivalent to special operations forces, equipped with automatic weapons and tactical gear. They have detailed intelligence about base layout and security protocols, which suggests inside knowledge or extensive surveillance. She paused and accessed additional information. "Based on their movement patterns and tactical communications, I believe they're Eastern European operatives, with connections to the network we eliminated in Afghanistan. Professional soldiers working as mercenaries for organizations with long-term strategic objectives." Marcus Torres checked his weapon and prepared for contact. "What are their operational objectives? Extract you alive, or eliminate you and anyone who might be able to identify them?" Emily's expression grew grim. Based on their rules of engagement and the lethal force they have already employed, I believe they intend to eliminate all potential witnesses. Taking me alive would be a secondary objective if the opportunity presented itself safely. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. They weren't just defending against an attack, they were fighting for their lives against professionals who had no intention of leaving survivors. Tommy Kim, the young officer who had offered to protect Emily at the beginning of the emergency, spoke quietly. "Ma'am, what's our tactical plan? How do we survive this?" Emily studied the defensive positions and assessed the capabilities of the personnel around her. 25 military personnel with various levels of combat training, adequate weapons and ammunition, strong defensive positions in a room designed for exactly this kind of situation. "We have advantages they don't know about," she said. "This room has capabilities they won't expect, and you all have training they may not be prepared for. But we need to work together and follow tactical discipline if we're going to get through this." She began assigning specific responsibilities to each person based on their military background and weapon systems. "Mitchell, you take point on the primary breach point. Torres, cover the secondary approach. Crawford, coordinate communication with any base security elements that might still be operational." Emily was now operating in full tactical mode, and everyone in the room could see the difference. This wasn't someone pretending to have military knowledge. This was someone with extensive command experience managing a crisis situation. "Peters, I need you to monitor intelligence feeds and provide updates on hostile movement. Johnson, maintain security on our escape routes. Kim, you're going to coordinate medical support if anyone gets hit." The assignments were given with the authority of someone accustomed to command, and they were accepted without question by military personnel who recognized competent leadership when they encountered it. Emily returned to the tactical equipment cabinet and retrieved items that made everyone realize just how classified this facility really was. Electronic countermeasures, communication intercept equipment, and defensive systems that were clearly designed for high-level special operations support. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said as she activated the room's defensive capabilities, "you're about to see some things that are classified above your current clearance levels. After this is over, there are going to be some serious discussions about what you can and cannot discuss with anyone outside this room." She paused and looked around at 25 faces, all of them now understanding that they had stumbled into something much bigger than a routine-based security emergency. "But first, we need to survive the next 20 minutes. The sound of tactical boots in the corridor outside grew louder, accompanied by the distinctive metallic sounds of military equipment being repositioned for assault. Emily activated the room's advanced surveillance systems, and multiple displays showed thermal imaging of 8 hostile operatives preparing to breach conference room B7. "Contact in 90 seconds, Emily announced, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had been through this exact scenario countless times before. "Everyone check your weapons, confirm your fields of fire, and remember, these are professionals who intend to eliminate all witnesses." Jake Mitchell positioned himself behind the reinforced barricade Emily had constructed, his weapon trained on the primary entrance. "Ma'am, what's our rules of engagement? Do we take prisoners if the opportunity presents itself?" Emily studied the tactical display showing hostile positions and equipment loadouts. "Negative. Based on their operational profile and the lethal force they have already employed, attempting to capture any of these operatives would compromise our defensive position. Engage to neutralize." The clinical precision of her tactical assessment made everyone in the room understand that they were no longer dealing with Emily Clark, civilian IT contractor. This was someone with extensive combat experience making life-and-death decisions based on professional military judgment. Marcus Torres adjusted his position to cover the secondary approach angle. "Ma'am, assuming we neutralize this immediate threat, what's our extraction plan? How do we get off this base safely?" Emily accessed building schematics on her tactical tablet and highlighted several routes that would provide cover and concealment during movement to secure areas. Service tunnels beneath this building connect to the main communications facility. If base security is still operational, that's where we'll find friendly forces and secure transportation off the installation. But even as she spoke, Emily was calculating probabilities and assessing risks that went far beyond the immediate tactical situation. If hostile operatives had penetrated Naval Base Coronado with this level of coordination and intelligence, there were implications for ongoing operations and personnel security that would require immediate attention from her chain of command. Captain Crawford monitored communication channels, listening for any traffic from base security forces that might indicate friendly personnel were still operational. I'm getting intermittent signals from the main gate security, but nothing from building security or base command. Whatever they did to our communications, it was comprehensive. The hostile forces were now directly outside conference room B7, and Emily could hear tactical commands being given in accented English. The voices were professional, controlled, executing a well-rehearsed plan with military precision. Breaching charges set, Emily translated from the tactical communications filtering through the walls. They're going to blow the door in 30 seconds. Everyone in the room tensed, weapons ready, positioned behind cover that Emily had arranged to provide maximum defensive capability. 25 military personnel, all of them now understanding that their survival depended on the tactical expertise of the woman they had dismissed as a printer technician less than an hour ago. 10 seconds, Emily announced, watching the tactical display as thermal signatures moved into final assault positions. Remember your training, watch your fields of fire, and stay behind cover until the breach is complete. The explosion was massive, far larger than necessary for a standard door breach. The entire room shook. Emergency lighting flickered, and smoke poured through the shattered entrance. But Emily had anticipated excessive force and positioned everyone to avoid the blast effects. Through the smoke came 8 figures in tactical gear, moving with the coordinated precision of special operations personnel. But they entered into a room that was prepared for exactly this kind of assault, defended by people who understood their operational capabilities. The engagement lasted exactly 2 minutes and 37 seconds. When the smoke cleared and the sound of gunfire faded, all 8 hostile operatives had been neutralized, and no one in conference room B7 had sustained serious injuries. Emily moved through the tactical area, checking bodies and securing weapons with the methodical efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. Threat eliminated, she announced, but we need to assume there are additional operatives on the base who will investigate when this team fails to report. Jake Mitchell was staring at Emily with newfound respect and more than a little awe. Ma'am, I've been through combat in 3 different theaters, and I've never seen tactical coordination like that. You didn't just know how to fight. You orchestrated that entire engagement like a symphony conductor. Emily was examining the equipment and personal effects of the neutralized hostiles, looking for intelligence about their operational structure and potential additional threats. Special Activities Division training is comprehensive, she said without looking up from her analysis. We're prepared for situations that conventional military forces don't encounter. The examination revealed information that made Emily's expression grow serious. Communication devices, operational orders, and personal identification that confirmed her worst suspicions about the nature of the threat they were facing. This isn't over, she said quietly. These operatives were part of a larger network with connections to multiple international organizations. Eliminating this team will buy us time, but it won't end the threat to base security or personnel safety. Major Peters was monitoring communication channels, listening for any indication that base security forces were regaining control of the situation. Ma'am, I'm starting to receive fragmentary reports from other areas of the installation. It sounds like security forces are engaging hostile elements throughout the base. Emily checked the time on her military-style watch, 3:32 p.m. The emergency had been in progress for 45 minutes, but the tactical situation was still fluid and potentially dangerous for everyone on Naval Base Coronado. She accessed her tablet and began reviewing intelligence assessments that were being updated in real time by agencies monitoring the situation. The information revealed connections between current events and ongoing international security concerns that went far beyond a simple revenge operation. Emily noticed something on the tactical tablet that immediately changed the nature of their situation. High-level military communication protocols were being activated, indicating that senior command authority was responding to the base security emergency with resources that suggested classified implications. We need to prepare for official contact, Emily announced to the room. Senior military leadership is en route, and there are going to be some very serious questions about what happened here and who was involved. Captain Crawford was beginning to understand the broader implications. Ma'am, are you telling us that this entire incident is going to be classified above our clearance levels? That we're going to be restricted in what we can discuss about our own experience? Emily nodded grimly. Special Activities Division operations are compartmentalized to protect ongoing intelligence activities and personnel security. Everyone in this room has been exposed to information and capabilities that are classified at levels requiring extensive security protocols. She paused and looked around at 25 faces, all of them now realizing that their routine day at Naval Base Coronado had just become a permanent part of their classified military records. But first, Emily continued, we need to secure this facility and prepare for extraction. Senior military leadership will want detailed briefings about everything that happened here, and we need to be ready to provide accurate tactical assessments. Emily was examining her advanced tactical equipment when she noticed that the device monitoring her financial security protocols had activated automatic protections during the engagement. The military-grade cybersecurity insurance bridge, designed specifically for government personnel, had detected potential compromise attempts and implemented defensive countermeasures. Even during tactical operations, financial security remains critical, she said, noting how the specialized insurance systems continued functioning seamlessly throughout the crisis situation. Tommy Kim was helping to secure weapons and ammunition from the neutralized hostiles when he noticed communication equipment that was still receiving incoming transmissions. Ma'am, it sounds like someone is trying to contact this team. Should we monitor their communications? Emily approached the hostile communication gear and activated monitoring protocols that allowed them to intercept operational traffic without revealing their own positions. What they heard made everyone in the room understand that the immediate threat had been much larger than they realized. Base Team Alpha, report status. Objective location has been confirmed. Prepare for Phase 2 operations. Emily recognized the voice immediately, and her blood ran cold. 3 years of operational security, 3 years of carefully maintained cover identity, 3 years of believing that the threats from Afghanistan had been neutralized. All of it had just been compromised by a voice she had hoped never to hear again. Marcus Torres saw her reaction and moved closer. Ma'am, you recognize that voice? Emily was accessing classified databases that confirmed her worst fears about the international connections behind the current operational threat. Viktor Kozlov, former Spetsnaz officer, current leader of a mercenary organization with contracts throughout Eastern Europe and Central Asia. We thought we eliminated him and his entire network 3 years ago. She paused, studying intelligence reports that revealed how extensively she had been under surveillance and how carefully this operation had been planned. Apparently, we were wrong. The communication equipment crackled with additional traffic that provided detailed intelligence about the scope of the threat they were facing. Multiple teams, extensive surveillance, detailed knowledge about base security protocols, and personnel movements. Ghost 6, Viktor Kozlov's voice came through the communication system with crystal clarity. I know you can hear me. 3 years of searching, 3 years of planning, and finally we have found you hiding among these American military children. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, calculating implications and assessing options that all seemed to lead to the same conclusion. Her operational security had been completely compromised, her cover identity was useless, and everyone in this room was now a target simply because they had witnessed her real capabilities. 3 years ago, you eliminated my entire network in Kabul. 17 operatives, millions of dollars in assets, relationships that had taken decades to develop, all destroyed by your ghost unit operation. Jake Mitchell was listening intently, beginning to understand the personal nature of the threat they were facing. Ma'am, this is about revenge for a classified operation you conducted in Afghanistan? Emily nodded, still monitoring the hostile communications and analyzing tactical options for protecting the personnel who had been caught up in her operational problems. But it's more than just revenge, she said quietly. Kozlov's organization provides services to international criminal networks, terrorist organizations, and rogue state actors. Eliminating Ghost Unit personnel is part of a larger strategy to compromise American intelligence capabilities. Viktor Kozlov's voice continued through the communication system, providing information that revealed how extensively Emily's cover had been penetrated. Emily Clark, information technology contractor, employed by civilian companies providing services to military installations. Very clever cover identity, but we have been watching you for 18 months, learning your patterns, identifying your vulnerabilities. The revelation that she had been under surveillance for over a year was devastating to Emily's operational security. Everything she had done, everywhere she had been, everyone she had contacted, all of it had been observed and analyzed by professional intelligence operatives. The question now, Kozlov continued, is whether you care enough about these military personnel to surrender yourself, or whether you will allow them to die for operational security that has already been compromised. Emily looked around the room at 25 people who had become targets simply because they had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Military personnel with families, careers, futures that were now at risk because of her presence on Naval Base Coronado. Major Peters understood the tactical dilemma immediately. "Ma'am, if you surrender to this Kozlov character, what happens to the rest of us? Do we become witnesses who need to be eliminated, or do we get to go home to our families?" Emily accessed intelligence assessments about Viktor Kozlov's operational methods and historical patterns. The analysis was not encouraging for anyone hoping to survive through cooperation or surrender. "Kozlov's organization has never left operational witnesses alive," she said grimly. "Surrendering myself might buy you a few minutes, but it wouldn't change the ultimate outcome for anyone in this room." She paused, studying tactical displays and assessing resources that might be available for continuing defensive operations. "Which means our only viable option is to neutralize the remaining threat before it can be fully implemented." Captain Crawford was monitoring base communication channels and receiving reports that indicated the scope of the hostile operation was larger than anyone had initially realized. "Ma'am, I'm getting fragmentary reports of additional security incidents throughout the base. This isn't just about extracting you. This is a coordinated assault on multiple facilities." Emily reviewed the tactical intelligence and confirmed Crawford's assessment. Multiple teams, simultaneous operations, objectives that included classified research facilities and intelligence storage areas throughout Naval Base Coronado. "Kozlov is using the operation against me as cover for a larger intelligence-gathering mission," Emily realized. While everyone's attention is focused on the personal revenge aspect, his other teams are accessing classified materials throughout the installation. The implications were staggering. Viktor Kozlov had organized a complex operation that used Emily's presence on the base as bait to justify a comprehensive intelligence-gathering mission that could compromise national security on multiple levels. Jake Mitchell was beginning to understand the strategic dimensions of what they were facing. "Ma'am, how do we stop an operation that's already in progress across an entire military installation? We're 25 people locked in one room." Emily accessed command authority protocols that she hadn't used in 3 years, activating communication channels that connected directly to the highest levels of military and intelligence command structure. Because 25 people locked in one room can still coordinate with military and intelligence assets that have the capability to respond to this level of threat, she said, as specialized communication equipment activated around the room. Emily was establishing secure communication links when the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor outside. But these weren't the tactical movements of hostile operatives. This was the measured pace of military personnel moving with authority and purpose. "Incoming friendly forces," Emily announced after analyzing the movement patterns. "Senior military leadership responding to the classified aspects of this incident." She paused and looked around the room one more time. "Everyone understand, what happens in the next few minutes is going to determine how this incident gets classified and what restrictions are placed on our ability to discuss these events." The footsteps stopped directly outside the damaged entrance to conference room B7. Emily could hear tactical equipment being positioned and communication protocols being established that indicated very senior military authority was taking direct control of the situation. "Personnel inside conference room B7, a voice called through the entrance. "This is Colonel Rodriguez, Naval Base Coronado Base Commander, with authorization from Pacific Fleet Command. Prepare for official contact and security verification." Emily straightened unconsciously, her posture shifting into military bearing that she hadn't displayed since her official transition to civilian contractor status. "Acknowledged, Colonel Rodriguez. Conference room B7 is secure, hostiles neutralized, all personnel accounted for." But even as she responded to the base commander, Emily was calculating the implications of direct contact with senior military leadership, while her operational cover was completely compromised. Everything that happened next would determine her future operational capability and the security of ongoing Special Activities Division missions. Colonel Rodriguez entered conference room B7 with a full military escort in combat gear, their weapons ready but not directly threatening. The colonel was a compact man with graying hair and the bearing of someone who had spent 30 years making life-and-death decisions under pressure. He stopped just inside the entrance and surveyed the tactical situation, neutralized hostiles, defensive positions, and 25 military personnel who were clearly organized under competent leadership. His eyes moved methodically around the room until they focused on Emily Clark. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Colonel Rodriguez studied Emily's face with the intensity of someone comparing what he saw to classified photographs and personnel files. Then he did something that shocked everyone in conference room B7. Colonel Rodriguez came to attention and delivered a sharp military salute directed specifically at Emily Clark, civilian IT contractor. "Colonel Clark," he said formally, "Operation Nightfall protocols have been compromised. We need Ghost Unit operational procedures implemented immediately." Emily returned the salute with military precision that revealed 20 years of service in the United States military, and everyone in the room finally understood that they had been witnessing the performance of someone who was far more than she had ever claimed to be. "Acknowledged, Colonel Rodriguez," Emily replied, and her voice now carried the authority of senior military rank. "Special Activities Division assets are prepared to coordinate with base security forces to neutralize remaining operational threats." As she saluted, her civilian contractor clothing shifted, and a tear appeared in her sleeve that revealed a tattoo everyone in the room could see clearly. The design was unmistakable: Special Activities Division insignia with operational designations that indicated the highest levels of classified military service. The silence that followed was complete and absolute. 25 military personnel, all of them suddenly understanding that they had spent the last hour questioning, dismissing, and challenging someone whose actual military rank was higher than anyone else in the room. Jake Mitchell was the first to find his voice, and when he spoke, it was with the stunned realization of someone whose entire understanding of reality had just been fundamentally altered. "Colonel, ma'am, Emily looked at Jake Mitchell with eyes that carried the weight of 20 years in military service, 15 of them in operational environments that didn't officially exist. "At ease, Chief Mitchell. You performed your duties under difficult circumstances, and you adapted to changing tactical requirements when operational security needed to be maintained." Marcus Torres snapped to attention so quickly he nearly lost his balance. "Ma'am, permission to apologize for inappropriate behavior toward a senior officer." Emily studied Marcus Torres for a moment, then shook her head slightly. "Staff Sergeant Torres, you demonstrated appropriate suspicion when confronted with anomalous behavior patterns during a security emergency. Your tactical awareness potentially saved lives by identifying threats that others might have missed." But her attention was primarily focused on Colonel Rodriguez and the military escort that had entered with him. "Colonel, what's our current operational status? How extensive is the hostile penetration of base facilities?" Colonel Rodriguez activated a tactical communication device that provided real-time intelligence about the situation throughout Naval Base Coronado. 6 different facilities have been breached, classified materials have been accessed in 3 locations, and we have confirmation of additional hostile teams still operational on the installation. Emily reviewed the tactical intelligence with the rapid analysis skills of someone who had spent years coordinating complex operations under time pressure. Kozlov's primary objective isn't revenge, it's intelligence gathering. The personal vendetta is operational cover for a comprehensive penetration mission. She accessed her own intelligence databases and began correlating current events with ongoing threat assessments that painted a picture of international implications from beyond the immediate tactical situation. "Colonel, we need to assume that Viktor Kozlov's organization has been planning this operation for months, with detailed surveillance of base security protocols and personnel movements. This isn't opportunistic. This is professional intelligence work." Major Peters stepped forward with the bearing of someone requesting permission to speak to senior authority. "Ma'am, Major Peters, Naval Intelligence. Request clarification about our operational security requirements following exposure to classified Special Activities Division protocols." Emily exchanged glances with Colonel Rodriguez, both of them understanding the complex security implications of 25 military personnel who had witnessed capabilities and operational procedures that were compartmentalized far above their normal clearance levels. "Major Peters, all personnel in this room are now subject to Special Access Program security requirements," Emily said formally. "What you have witnessed here falls under national security classifications that restrict your ability to discuss these events without authorization." She paused, looking around the room at 25 faces. all of them now understanding that their routine day at Naval Base Coronado had just become a permanent part of their classified military service records. However, Emily continued, your performance during this incident demonstrates capabilities and discretion that may qualify you for enhanced security clearances and specialized assignment opportunities. Captain Crawford had been listening to base communication channels and receiving updates about the ongoing security situation. Ma'am, base security forces are reporting that they've regained control of most facilities, but there are still hostile elements operational in the communications center and main intelligence facility. Emily studied the tactical displays and began developing operational plans that would utilize the resources available to neutralize the remaining threats while protecting classified materials and personnel throughout the installation. Colonel Rodriguez, I recommend we implement containment protocols while special response assets eliminate the remaining hostile elements. Standard-based security forces aren't equipped to handle operatives with this level of training and equipment. But even as she spoke, Emily was calculating personal implications that went far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Her cover identity had been completely compromised, her operational security was destroyed, and her ability to continue Special Activities Division missions was severely limited. Colonel Rodriguez understood the broader implications immediately. Colonel Clark, Pacific Fleet Command has been monitoring this situation since the initial security breach. We have assets en route that are specifically equipped to handle classified intelligence operations and personnel extractions. Emily nodded, but her attention was drawn to communication equipment that was receiving incoming transmissions from Viktor Kozlov's remaining operational teams. The intercepted traffic revealed that the threat to Naval Base Coronado was far from over. Base Commander, Kozlov's voice came through the communication system with the confidence of someone who still held tactical advantages. Your defensive response has been impressive, but incomplete. My teams have acquired intelligence materials that will compromise American military operations throughout the Pacific region. Emily felt the cold certainty of someone whose worst operational fears were being realized. 3 years of careful cover, 3 years of believing the threats had been neutralized, and now Viktor Kozlov was not only threatening her personally, but compromising national security on a strategic level. Colonel Clark, Kozlov continued, and everyone in the room could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Your presence on that base has provided exactly the distraction we needed to complete our primary mission objectives. Emily accessed real-time intelligence about the materials that had been accessed throughout Naval Base Coronado, and the analysis confirmed that Viktor Kozlov's operation had achieved significant intelligence gathering success, while everyone's attention was focused on the personal aspects of the threat. He used me, Emily said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else in the room. The entire revenge operation was tactical deception to cover intelligence gathering that could compromise national security for years. She looked up at Colonel Rodriguez with the grim expression of someone who understood the full implications of what had just happened. Colonel, we need to assume that everything Kozlov's teams access today will be shared with hostile intelligence services within hours. The realization that they had not just survived a personal attack, but had been manipulated into allowing a major intelligence compromise, was devastating to everyone in the room who understood the strategic implications. Tommy Kim, who had been monitoring communication channels, spoke up with information that brought relief to everyone in the room. Ma'am, I'm receiving reports that Viktor Kozlov and his remaining teams have been captured attempting to extract from the base. Joint FBI and military assets intercepted them at the perimeter. All hostile operatives are in custody. Emily accessed the real-time intelligence feeds showing the dramatic conclusion to the 3-year manhunt. Tactical displays revealed Viktor Kozlov and his remaining operatives surrounded by joint FBI and military assets at the base perimeter, their extraction helicopter disabled by precision sniper fire. Viktor Kozlov, Emily said quietly, watching the thermal imaging as the man who had hunted her for years was forced to his knees by federal agents. Former Spetsnaz officer, international arms dealer, terrorist network coordinator. After 3 years of running, his war crimes in Afghanistan and attacks on American soil have finally caught up with him. The tactical display showed Kozlov being read his rights while classified documents were recovered from his extraction vehicles. Emily felt a profound sense of closure watching the man responsible for the deaths of 17 Ghost Unit operatives finally face American justice. Ma'am, Major Peters said softly, How does it feel to know that the threat that forced you into hiding is finally over? Emily studied the display showing Kozlov in federal custody, surrounded by evidence that would ensure he spent the rest of his life in maximum security prison. Like I can finally stop looking over my shoulder, she said simply. Some enemies you hunt, others hunt you. Today, justice won. Emily was already activating pursuit protocols that would coordinate with multiple intelligence agencies to track and intercept the stolen materials before they could be transferred to hostile organizations. Colonel Rodriguez, we need immediate coordination with FBI, NSA, and military intelligence assets throughout the region. If Kozlov's teams reach their extraction points, the security damage will be irreversible. But even as she coordinated the response to the intelligence theft, Emily was dealing with personal implications that would affect her ability to continue operational service. Her cover was blown, her location was compromised, and her effectiveness as a Special Activities Division asset was severely limited. Dr. Amanda Walsh, who had been observing the tactical situation with professional interest, spoke for the first time since the shooting had ended. Colonel Clark, from a psychological assessment perspective, your operational security has been completely compromised. Continuing field assignments would represent unacceptable risk to both mission success and personnel safety. Emily understood the assessment and its implications immediately. After 15 years in the most classified elements of American military and intelligence service, her operational career was effectively over. Acknowledged, Dr. Walsh. Special Activities Division will need to reassign my operational responsibilities and implement new security protocols for ongoing missions. She paused, looking around conference room B7 one more time, calculating everything that had changed in the space of less than 2 hours. But first, we need to minimize the damage from today's intelligence compromise and ensure that Viktor Kozlov doesn't get to use stolen American military secrets to threaten additional operations. Colonel Rodriguez was coordinating with multiple agencies through secure communication channels, implementing response protocols that would attempt to recover stolen materials and neutralize ongoing threats to national security. Emily looked around the room at the 25 military personnel who had become witnesses to classified operations and participants in events that would be analyzed and studied for years. Each of them would face security interviews, background investigations, and career implications that resulted from their accidental involvement in Special Activities Division operations. Jake Mitchell approached with the respectful bearing of someone addressing a senior officer. Ma'am, request permission to express gratitude for tactical leadership during the engagement. Without your expertise, casualties would have been severe. Emily studied Jake Mitchell's face, seeing the genuine respect and professional appreciation that had replaced the dismissive mockery from the beginning of their encounter. Chief Mitchell, you and your team adapted to unusual circumstances and performed exceptionally under pressure. Your tactical discipline and willingness to follow unfamiliar leadership potentially saved multiple lives. She paused, then continued with the formal authority of someone delivering official military assessment. I will be recommending all personnel in this room for commendations related to performance during classified operations under hostile fire. Marcus Torres stepped forward with a formal request. Ma'am, permission to apologize publicly for inappropriate behavior toward a senior officer during emergency operations? Emily considered the request, understanding the personal and professional implications for a Marine who had publicly challenged someone whose actual military rank was far above his own. Staff Sergeant Torres, your suspicious behavior was tactically appropriate given the unusual circumstances. Military personnel should question anomalous behavior patterns during security emergencies, even when those questions prove to be directed towards senior authority. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person who had participated in the challenging and questioning that had ultimately led to the revelation of her true identity. What happened here demonstrates the importance of tactical awareness, operational security, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. All of you performed your duties appropriately, even when you didn't understand the full context of what you were dealing with. Captain Crawford approached with the bearing of someone requesting guidance about complex security procedures. Ma'am, what are our obligations regarding classification of these events? How do we handle security debriefings and ongoing operational security requirements? Emily exchanged glances with Colonel Rodriguez, both of them understanding the extensive security protocols that would be required to manage the classification implications of 25 military personnel who had been exposed to Special Activities Division operations. Captain Crawford, everyone in this room is now subject to Special Access Program restrictions. You will be contacted by security personnel who will conduct detailed interviews about everything you observed and experienced. She paused, ensuring that everyone understood the seriousness of the security requirements they would face. These events are classified at levels that restrict your ability to discuss them with anyone, including spouses, family members, friends, or military colleagues, without specific authorization from appropriate authorities. Major Peters nodded, with the understanding of someone who worked regularly with classified materials. Understood, ma'am. Will we be eligible for enhanced security clearances based on our exposure to these operational procedures? Emily smiled slightly, the first genuine expression of satisfaction she had shown since the emergency began. Major Peters, your performance during this incident suggests capabilities that would be valuable for specialized assignments. Enhanced security clearances are likely, along with opportunities for advanced training and operational responsibilities. She looked around the room one more time, realizing that while her own operational career might be ending, the people who had fought alongside her today might be beginning new chapters in military service that would utilize the skills and experience they had demonstrated under pressure. Emily received a communication through her secure device that provided updates about the pursuit of Viktor Kozlov's teams and the efforts to recover stolen intelligence materials. The news was mixed. Some materials had been intercepted, but significant classified information had successfully been extracted from Naval Base Coronado. Colonel Rodriguez, she said after reviewing the intelligence update, FBI and military assets have successfully intercepted Viktor Kozlov's extraction team at the Mexican border. Kozlov is in custody and 95% of stolen materials have been recovered. She accessed threat assessment databases that would help determine the long-term implications of the stolen materials and the adjustments that would be required for ongoing military and intelligence operations throughout the Pacific region. We need to assume that everything Kozlov acquired will be shared with hostile intelligence services within 72 hours. Military and intelligence commands need to implement new security protocols immediately. Colonel Rodriguez was already coordinating the massive security review that would be required to assess and minimize the damage from the intelligence theft. Colonel Clark, Pacific Fleet Command is requesting your immediate availability for comprehensive debriefing about Viktor Kozlov's operational capabilities and potential future threats. Emily understood that the debriefing process would be extensive, detailed, and would likely determine her future role in military and intelligence service. Her knowledge about Kozlov's organization and operational methods made her a critical asset for ongoing security efforts. Acknowledged, Colonel Rodriguez. Special Activities Division assets are prepared for immediate coordination with all relevant intelligence agencies. She paused, looking once more at the 25 military personnel who had shared this experience and who would carry the memory of these events for the rest of their military careers. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened here today demonstrates why military service requires constant readiness, tactical flexibility, and the ability to perform under pressure when circumstances exceed normal parameters. Emily was preparing to depart with Colonel Rodriguez when her secure communication device received an incoming call that displayed the highest priority encryption protocols. The call was originating from Central Intelligence Agency headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and carried authorizations that indicated direct communication from Senior Operational Command. Ghost 6, this is Langley Control. Immediate operational requirements have developed based on intelligence gathered from today's incident at Naval Base Coronado. Emily activated privacy protocols that allowed her to take the call without compromising operational security in front of personnel who weren't cleared for the highest levels of Special Activities Division operations. Acknowledged, Langley Control. Ghost 6 is prepared for mission briefing. The voice on the secure communication carried the authority of someone coordinating operations that spanned multiple international jurisdictions and involved the highest levels of national security priority. Ghost 6, Viktor Kozlov, has been successfully captured along with his entire operational network. All stolen intelligence materials have been recovered. Mission accomplished. Your operational security has been restored, and cover identity can be rebuilt. Emily felt a profound sense of relief and closure that she hadn't experienced in 3 years. The threat that had haunted her since Afghanistan was finally eliminated. Acknowledged Langley Control. Request confirmation. The Kozlov network is completely neutralized. Confirmed Ghost 6. Viktor Kozlov and 17 operatives are in federal custody. The 3-year hunt is over. Well done. Emily listened to the mission briefing while everyone in conference room B7 watched with the fascination of people witnessing the coordination of international intelligence operations at the highest levels of classification. New identity documentation is being prepared. Extraction helicopter is en route to Naval Base Coronado with estimated arrival in 20 minutes. Mission timeline requires immediate deployment to intercept intelligence transfer before it can be completed. Emily realized that while her cover as Emily Clark, IT contractor, was completely compromised, her operational value to Special Activities Division was not diminished. If anything, the intelligence gathered about Viktor Kozlov's organization during today's incident made her more valuable for ongoing counterintelligence operations. Acknowledged Langley Control. Ghost 6 is prepared for immediate deployment. She ended the secure communication and turned to address Colonel Rodriguez and the 25 military personnel who had shared the most intense 2 hours of tactical operations in their military careers. Ladies and gentlemen, the mission continues. What happened here today was the beginning of a larger operation, not the conclusion. Emily moved through the room, speaking individually with key personnel who had demonstrated exceptional capabilities during the emergency. Chief Mitchell, your tactical leadership capabilities would be valuable for specialized assignment opportunities. Expect contact from Special Operations Command within the week. She approached Marcus Torres next. Staff Sergeant Torres, your operational awareness and tactical discipline indicate potential for advanced training programs. Special Activities Division may have assignment opportunities that utilize your demonstrated capabilities. Emily continued around the room, providing individual assessments and recommendations that could affect the military careers and security clearances of everyone who had participated in the classified operations. Captain Crawford, your security expertise and crisis management skills are needed for enhanced base protection protocols. Expect assignment opportunities that utilize your demonstrated leadership abilities. She paused beside Major Peters. Major, your intelligence analysis capabilities and tactical adaptability suggest qualifications for specialized assignment opportunities with multiple agencies. Enhanced security clearances are highly likely. Emily realized that while this incident had ended her operational career as an undercover civilian contractor, it might be launching the specialized military careers of 25 people who had proven their capabilities under the most demanding circumstances possible. Dr. Walsh, your psychological assessment capabilities during operational stress situations are valuable for military and intelligence applications. Expect opportunities for specialized training and assignment to classified programs. Emily addressed the entire room one final time before departing for her next mission assignment. Ladies and gentlemen, military service requires readiness for circumstances that exceed normal parameters. What you demonstrated here today, tactical flexibility, operational discipline, and the ability to adapt to changing requirements, represents the highest standards of military professionalism. She paused, ensuring that everyone understood the significance of their experience and the recognition they would receive for their performance. You will all be recommended for commendations related to classified operations under hostile fire. Your service records will reflect exceptional performance during circumstances that tested every aspect of your military training. Emily moved toward the entrance where Colonel Rodriguez was waiting with the military escort that would coordinate her extraction and preparation for the next phase of operations. Colonel Rodriguez, thank you for professional command coordination during a complex operational situation. Your leadership enabled successful resolution of multiple tactical challenges. Colonel Rodriguez returned Emily's salute with the respect due to a senior officer whose operational expertise had prevented what could have been a catastrophic intelligence disaster. Colonel Clark, your tactical leadership and operational expertise prevented casualties and minimized intelligence compromise under exceptional circumstances. It has been an honor to serve alongside Special Activities Division assets. Emily could hear the approaching helicopter that would extract her from Naval Base Coronado and transport her to the next phase of operations against Viktor Kozlov's organization. The familiar sound of rotor blades and tactical equipment represented continuation rather than conclusion. "The hunt is over," Emily said to everyone in conference room B7, her voice carrying satisfaction and closure. "Viktor Kozlov and his network have been brought to justice. The threat that forced me into hiding for 3 years has been eliminated." She paused at the entrance for one final look at the 25 military personnel who had discovered that routine duty assignments could suddenly become classified operations that tested every aspect of their training and capabilities. "Some wars never end," Emily said, her voice carrying the weight of 20 years in military service and the certainty of someone prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. "But neither do the warriors who fight them." Emily departed conference room B7 with Colonel Rodriguez and his military escort, leaving behind 25 people whose understanding of military service had been permanently changed by their exposure to operational realities that most military personnel never encounter. As the helicopter lifted off from Naval Base Coronado, carrying Emily toward her next mission against Viktor Kozlov's organization, the people in conference room B7 began to understand that they had witnessed something that would affect their military careers and security clearances for years to come. Jake Mitchell stood beside the damaged entrance, watching the helicopter disappear into the distance. "I've been through 3 combat deployments," he said quietly to Marcus Torres, "and I've never met anyone like her." Marcus Torres nodded, still processing the realization that he had spent an hour challenging and questioning someone whose actual military rank and operational experience far exceeded his own. "She turned us into a tactical unit in under an hour," he said with genuine admiration. "We went from dismissing her as a civilian contractor to following her tactical leadership without question." Captain Crawford was already receiving communication from security personnel who would conduct the extensive debriefing and classification interviews required for everyone who had been exposed to Special Activities Division operations. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the room, "we're about to begin security procedures that will take several days and will affect our military records permanently. What happened here today is now part of our classified service history." Major Peters was studying the tactical equipment and defensive positions that Emily had constructed during the emergency. The operational expertise she demonstrated indicates training and experience at levels most of us will never encounter. We were privileged to work alongside someone whose capabilities represent the highest standards of American military service. Dr. Walsh was taking notes for the psychological assessment reports that would be required for everyone who had participated in classified operations under combat stress. From a professional perspective, today's events demonstrate how quickly military personnel can adapt to exceptional circumstances when provided with competent leadership and clear tactical guidance. Chief Johnson was examining the communication equipment that had provided intelligence about Viktor Kozlov's operations. MAM had access to intelligence systems and operational capabilities that most of us don't even know exist. We got a glimpse into military and intelligence operations at classification levels far above our normal experience. Tommy Kim, the young officer who had offered to protect Emily at the beginning of the emergency, was beginning to understand how dramatically his perspective on military service had changed. "She taught us more about tactical operations in 2 hours than I learned in 4 years of officer training," he said with the humility of someone whose assumptions about military capability had been completely revised. "And she did it while maintaining operational security and protecting classified information that could affect national security." The 25 military personnel began the process of securing conference room B7 and preparing for the extensive security interviews that would be required for their continued military service. Each of them understood that they had participated in events that would be studied and analyzed by military and intelligence professionals for years. Their accidental involvement in Special Activities Division operations had provided them with experience and insights that would affect their military careers and security clearances permanently. As they waited for security personnel to arrive and begin the classification procedures, they continued to discuss the tactical expertise and operational capabilities they had witnessed. The way she coordinated defensive positions, analyzed threat capabilities, and managed tactical communications, Jake Mitchell said thoughtfully, that was professional military leadership at the highest levels. And she did it while maintaining cover identity and protecting operational security that we didn't even know existed, Marcus Torres added. until the very end, when circumstances forced her to reveal her actual military background and authorization levels. Captain Crawford was reviewing communication logs and tactical reports that would be required for the official documentation of the incident. Ladies and gentlemen, our performance during this emergency will be evaluated by senior military and intelligence leadership. What we demonstrated today, tactical discipline, operational flexibility, and the ability to follow unfamiliar leadership, represents the standards they expect from military personnel at all levels. Major Peters was considering the career implications of exposure to classified operations and enhanced security clearance opportunities. Enhanced security clearances, specialized training programs, assignment opportunities with multiple agencies. Today's events could open doors to military and intelligence careers we never considered possible. Dr. Walsh was analyzing the psychological and professional development implications for military personnel who had been exposed to operational stress situations far beyond their normal experience. From a career development perspective, she said, exposure to this level of operational stress and tactical coordination demonstrates capabilities that qualify you for advanced military and intelligence assignments. The security personnel arrived to begin the extensive debriefing and classification procedures that would be required for everyone who had witnessed Special Activities Division operations. As they prepared for interviews that would document every detail of their experience, the 25 military personnel carried with them the memory of working alongside someone whose operational expertise and tactical leadership had prevented what could have been a catastrophic intelligence disaster. The weight of that realization settled over each of them differently, some with awe, others with a newfound respect for the complexities of military service they had never previously imagined. Jake Mitchell found himself replaying every moment of tactical coordination, every decision Emily had made under pressure, every demonstration of capabilities that had transformed their understanding of what professional military leadership actually meant. He had served with elite units across multiple theaters of operation, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for witnessing someone who operated at Emily's level of tactical sophistication and strategic thinking. Marcus Torres was processing the humbling recognition that his initial dismissive attitude toward a civilian contractor had revealed gaps in his own professional judgment that could have had serious operational consequences. The lesson about assumptions and tactical awareness would affect how he approached every military situation for the rest of his career. Emily had demonstrated that expertise and authority didn't always present themselves in expected formats, and that recognizing capability required sophisticated professional judgment. Captain Crawford was already analyzing the security and leadership implications for her own command responsibilities. Emily's tactical coordination had revealed organizational and defensive capabilities that Crawford hadn't known existed within her own facility. The realization that Naval Base Coronado contained classified assets and operational procedures far beyond her security clearance made her question how much of military capability remained invisible to most personnel, even those in leadership positions. They had learned that military service could require adaptation to circumstances far beyond normal parameters, and that tactical excellence and operational discipline were essential for protecting national security at levels they had never previously considered. The emergency had demonstrated that routine military assignments could suddenly transition into classified operations, requiring skills, judgment, and adaptability that tested every aspect of their training. Major Peters was contemplating the intelligence and strategic implications of what they had witnessed. Emily's access to classified databases, her coordination with multiple agencies, and her command authority over operations involving international threats revealed layers of military and intelligence coordination that operated far above the level most personnel ever encountered. The sophistication of American military capabilities was far greater than he had realized, with assets and procedures designed for threats and challenges that required extraordinary professional competence. Dr. Walsh was analyzing the psychological resilience and adaptive capacity that all 25 personnel had demonstrated under extreme operational stress. Their ability to transition from routine duty to classified combat operations, to accept tactical leadership from an unexpected source, and to maintain operational discipline throughout the crisis indicated professional development potential that exceeded normal military parameters. Emily had not only led them through a tactical emergency, but had revealed capabilities within themselves they hadn't known existed. Most importantly, they had discovered that American military and intelligence capabilities included assets and operational procedures that represented the highest standards of professional military service. Emily Clark represented a level of military excellence that existed within the American defense establishment but remained largely invisible to most personnel. Her combination of tactical expertise, operational experience, and strategic understanding demonstrated why American military forces maintain superiority in complex international environments. The implications extended far beyond their personal experience. Each of them now understood that military service involved protecting national security through capabilities and procedures that required exceptional professional competence, extensive training, and the ability to operate under classification levels that most citizens would never know existed. Emily had shown them that defending America involved operational realities far more complex and demanding than most people could imagine. Tommy Kim was beginning to understand that his military career had fundamentally changed direction. The exposure to Special Activities Division operations, the demonstration of tactical capabilities under combat stress, and the recognition he had received for performance under exceptional circumstances opened possibilities for military service he had never considered. Emily had not only saved their lives, but had potentially launched military careers that could serve American national security interests at the highest levels. Emily Clark, Special Activities Division Colonel, had taught them lessons about military excellence that would affect their service careers and their understanding of what it meant to defend American national security interests around the world. Her demonstration of tactical leadership, operational expertise, and strategic thinking under the most demanding circumstances had provided them with insights into military service that would guide their professional development for decades. They had witnessed American military capability at its finest, coordinated by someone whose dedication and competence represented the best of military professionalism. As Conference Room B7 was secured and the classification procedures began, each of them carried the knowledge that they had participated in operations that demonstrated why American military forces remained the most capable and professional in the world. They had seen firsthand the training, expertise, and dedication required to protect national security against threats that operated at international levels with sophisticated capabilities and extensive resources. And in Berlin, Germany, Viktor Kozlov's organization was about to discover that eliminating Ghost 6 would require capabilities they had never encountered, coordinated by someone whose tactical expertise and operational experience had been tested under the most demanding circumstances possible. The war Emily Clark had thought that was over 3 years ago was just beginning, but this time, she would be hunting with the full support of American military and intelligence assets, and the knowledge that 25 military personnel at Naval Base Coronado had proven they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead.
The stories end here, but the journey continues. Many new episodes are waiting for you, and if you enjoy, please take a moment to like, subscribe to our EV Story channel, and turn on the bell. See you in the next story.